Heyo, it's been a while since the initial release of Halo CE Rebalanced, and in that time I've been making tons of additions and tweaks, culminating now in version 2.0. If you aren't aware, this is a full campaign mod that rebalances the weapon and enemy sandbox, adds new things to encounters, and so much more, to make an already fantastic game in Halo CE as close to perfect as possible. If you haven't watched the initial release video yet, it is linked in the description. And what better time to release 2.0 of CE Rebalanced than with the release of Halo Anniversary on MCC PC. So this update is now available for both that and Custom Edition. Let's get into the big changes since 1.0. First off is that player health has long since been restored back to vanilla, as there are several other better and more interesting ways in which enemies have been made more hazardous that we'll get to soon. The player's jump height has also been increased to be similar to Halo 2 and 3, allowing jumps to be high enough to reach more areas and open up more opportunities and encounters, but still low enough to where you can't just skip sections. Moving on to the sandbox changes, the Needler and Rocket Launcher's melee damages have both been buffed by a lot. Naturally, since the Needler uses its needles to melee foes, and the Rocket whacks them over the head with its full weight, their melee damage should reflect that. So now they're capable of one-shotting grunts, jackals, and unshielded flood, and doing a high amount of damage on stronger foes too. And speaking of the rocket launcher, I've increased its rate of fire to that of every one of its counterparts post-CE, so you don't have to wait nearly as long before you can fire off another rocket. This buff was spurred on by the fact that I've given the sniper rifle its reach attribute of chipping vehicle health. Given that the sniper rifle is basically a handheld anti-material cannon, I think it doing more damage to vehicles is only fitting, whereas in vanilla it didn't do any. I'm sure everybody is familiar with how I've buffed the assault rifle's accuracy. It's been given a couple more buffs since, one of which being that it does more damage to elite health, emphasizing it as a health shredder and making it more viable against them. And lastly, for the weapons, the Shade turret has seen a decrease to its bullet magnetism, which was so extreme that it actually ended up hurting more than it helped, with how it always diverted the projectiles at absurd angles. With the magnetism decreased, its shots stay on target a lot more in groups of enemies. Now, moving on to the biggest changes 2.0 brings. The Flood and Vanilla CE were a great shakeup to the gameplay that really changed how you approached combat and the dynamics of the weapon and enemy sandbox. That said, there was seldom ever a reason for you to use anything other than the pistol and shotgun against them, and so I sought to mix that up more often. The key part of which being, giving all elite combat forms shields, but decreasing their health. This simple change instantly involves the plasma pistol and plasma rifle way more in combat with them, given their bonus damage against shields. The shotgun and pistol now face more of a roadblock in being unable to easily stun elite combat forms, which is a vital component of fighting the Flood. That element of crowd control gives the plasma weapons an edge and opens up so many more sandbox dynamics in Flood encounters. The shotgun and pistol is still viable against the Flood as long as you play smart, but now the plasma weapons have their own avenue of cutting down the elite combat forms. However, the rebalancing of the Flood does not end there. The Flood have now become headshottable, which prevents them from ever rising back up if you land one. A shot to the head for the human forms, and a shot to the core and the chest for the elite forms, giving the pistol its own unique role if you can hit the mark and get past the elite form shields. Unlike vanilla, the Flood now take a good amount of damage from melee attacks from all weapons, meaning if you find yourself backed into a corner with an empty mag, you'll still have a method of escape. This doubly works to ensure running without plasma weapons is still viable. Speaking of viability, the assault rifle in vanilla was explicitly made to only do half damage to the Flood. In Rebalanced, I increased that damage on them by a bit, but as of 2.0, the assault rifle now flourishes in a role all its own against the Flood. The AR now does more damage to carrier forms than most other weapons, allowing it to quickly pop them off and strip down any hordes they're around. Especially since now, the carriers will instantly pop upon being killed by an explosion instead of flying away like in vanilla, as funny as it can be. This makes for a chaotic set of chain reactions if there are multiple carriers cluttered around, and quite satisfying to set off if I do say so myself. However, the key to giving the assault rifle its own role here is drastically increasing the number of infection forms spawned, since the carriers will pop a lot closer to each other now, subsequently also killing more of the infection forms spawned. Their numbers needed to be increased to compensate, but this also works to make the Flood feel like more of an overwhelming marauding force, and that's where the assault rifle comes in. In vanilla, it was already the best for dispatching infection forms, but here that role has been emphasized significantly, as with their increased damage in numbers, you're going to find yourself overrun if you don't keep a handle on it. The AR, I find, is exceptional in doing just that, specifically rapid firing at a carrier where as soon as they pop, the infection forms spawned will instantly be killed under the weapon's high fire output, ultimately saving you the hassle. And so that's how the Flood has been rebalanced. I find Halo's combat is at its best when the player is encouraged to rotate their two weapons constantly. Different sets of weapons will give you different strengths and weaknesses against the enemy sandbox, so that's the approach I took in making CE's Flood involve the entire sandbox much more and in more fun ways. Hunters and Elites in CE always had telegraphed, predictable animations, so I thought it'd be fitting to increase their melee damage, making getting close to them more daunting like it should be, especially for Hunters. Just like Halo 2 Rebalanced, I've given the sword-wielding elite zealots the ability to throw grenades, making it so you can't just ignore them if you're outside of their range. Lastly, we'll end it off with tweaks to the boys we all know and love. The Marines in vanilla CE flinched with every hit they took, no matter what weapon they were shot by, making it easy for them to get stun-locked with no chance for retaliation. So I've increased their stun threshold to where they can take a bit more damage before flinching, just like their counterparts in every game since. Marine Majors will now throw grenades more often, working to shake up gameplay dynamics every now and then, especially with how crazy CE's frags are. Speaking of grenades, the Marines you rescue in Truth and Reconciliation will now throw plasma grenades as if they've scavenged them off the dead coveys. And to cap it off, the gunner of your Warthog is now more accurate, making it so they sweep a smaller distance to hit their targets a bit more quickly. Bam! CE Rebalanced 2.0. I've really enjoyed creating these campaign mods and showing love to one of my all-time favorite game series. With all the Halo games being rolled out one by one for MCC PC, I will only continue to create more rebalances from here, and I am looking forward to it so much. Once Halo 2 rolls around on the collection, keep an eye out for me, cause I'll get on recreating Halo 2 Rebalanced as soon as possible, with version 3.0 at that. Thanks for watching. Support my mods, videos, and animations by throwing a couple bucks my way on Patreon. Like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff, and I'll see you again soon. Peace.